Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to explore generics and traits, two powerful features of the Rust programming language. And we'll do this by taking a look at a few practical examples. So for each example, we'll take a look at the standard way without generics, and then we'll see how we can improve the code using generics and traits. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll at least have a basic idea on how to implement them in your own code. So if that sounds interesting to you, then let's just go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so let's start with a very simple example. So here we have a vector of i32 values, and the goal is to sum the values to produce a total. So to do this, we can create a sum function that takes the vector of i32 as input and returns an i32 as a total. Now the code for this function is really not relevant. In fact, we can shorten this code by simply returning an iterator and then calling the sum method on it. But here I've chosen to iterate over the values and then append the values to an accumulator called total. Okay, so now this code will compile just fine. However, the problem with this function is that it can only be used with vectors of i32. So if we had a vector of floats, then this function will no longer be usable. So essentially, we'd have to create a different function for each of the types that we wanted to support with almost identical code. Now, since these functions do the same task, it makes sense to create a generic function that we can use with multiple types. So to do this, we can use generics and traits, where generics allows us to write code that works for different types, and traits allows us to define shared behaviors across those types. Now, if that didn't make any sense, then don't worry, hopefully it'll become a lot clearer when we start writing the code. Okay, so let's clear the code and start from fresh again. So once again, we have a vector of i32 values, and this time we're going to take a trait-only approach. So here we're defining a trait called sum with a single function called sum that takes a reference to self and returns an i32 value. Now let's just pause here for a quick moment and unpack this. So this trait is like a contract, and if we implement it for a type, then we need to provide the implementation for that sum function for that type. Now self here refers to the type that we're implementing this trait for, but notice that this function is returning an i32 value. So this means that any type that implements a sum trait needs to provide a sum function that returns an i32. But the problem here is that we also want to be able to sum floats and return a float. So this clearly isn't going to work, but let's just go with it and then we'll see if we can fix it later. Okay, so now we can go ahead and implement this trait for a vector of i32s, and you'll notice that I simplified the sum function by calling the sum method on the iterator created from self. So all we have to do now is call the sum method on the vector as if it was a standard method. Okay, so now this works fine, but what about a vector of floats? So let's go ahead and see if we can implement this trait for a vector of f32s. So here you can see that we get an error on the iterator sum method, and that's because it returns an f32, but our sum function is expected to return an i32, so clearly there's a mismatch here. So the real problem here is that we've hard-coded the return type to i32, which makes the trait too restrictive. But we can actually fix this using something called an associated type, and an associated type is basically a placeholder inside a trait. So essentially each implementation can decide what that type should be. So in our case, what we can do to fix this code is to add an associated type called output, and then the sum function can return this type. So now we can update each of the implementations to specify the output type. So for vectors of i32, we want to return an i32, and vectors of f32, we want to return an f32. Okay, so now this code will compile. So we have a trait which is essentially a contract, and multiple types can implement this trait. But the issue here is that these two implementations have almost identical code. The only difference is that the output type is different. So whilst traits can work, the code repetition in scenarios like this makes this approach inefficient and hard to scale. So this is where we can use generics to solve this problem. So what we want to do is write a single function that we can use with multiple types. Now, before we get into the code, I just want to show you that we can also use associated types as input parameters. So here as an example, we're going to update the sum function to accept an associated type called input, and then we're going to take this value and add it to the final sum. So now just like before, each implementation needs to specify what the input type should be. So I just wanted to show you this code very quickly so that you can see that associated types can be used for both input and output types. Okay, so now let's see how we can improve this code using generics. So we'll start again with a vector of i32 values. So once again, we're going to create a trait called sum and define a sum function. But this time, instead of using a concrete return type, we're going to make it generic so that it can work with vectors of different types. So to do this, we need to add a type parameter, which is basically a placeholder for a type that we don't know yet. So this placeholder will be filled in with a concrete type when the code is actually used. So here we're using a type parameter called t as the placeholder, but Rust thinks that t is an actual type in the scope, and so this is why we have this error. So before we can actually use t, we need to first define it as a type parameter, and we do this by adding it to the trait. Okay, so now we have a generic trait, and we can implement this trait on concrete types as well as generic types. So let's take a look at a quick example of a concrete type. So here we're implementing the sum trait for a vector of i32s. Now notice that we're substituting the type parameter t with the concrete type u16. So now from this point onwards, every reference to t in this implementation will be treated as a u16. So if you take a look at the sum method, then you'll notice that it's returning a u16. Now if we try to change it to a different type, then we'll get an error message stating that the sum method has an incompatible type. Okay, so now in this example, instead of using the iterator sum method, we're going to iterate over the values in the vector and add the values to a variable called total. And this is just so that you can see that we're using the U16 type in more than one place. Okay, so now this code will compile, but here's where things get interesting. We can implement the sum trait again for a vector of i32s, but this time with a different type for t. So here you can see that we have the same implementation for a vector of i32s, but this time we replace t with a u32. Now notice that now we have an error. Now this of course is due to the fact that we have multiple implementations for a vector of i32s, so the compiler doesn't know which implementation to use. Now, in most cases, the compiler can infer which implementation to use where there's enough context, but in this case there is no context, so we have to provide type annotations. So here we're annotating the sum variable as a U16, so now the compiler knows which implementation to use. Okay, so now before we move on to a fully generic example, let's take a quick moment to compare this code with the previous trait-only version. So in both cases we have multiple implementations, but the difference here is that in the generic example we can implement the trait multiple times for the same type. But with the trait-only approach, we can only implement the trait once per type. So just to be clear, generic traits can be implemented for a type multiple times. So here's another quick example. So here we have a generic trait called print implemented for a vector of i32s, and the idea is to format the vector using different separators like a comma or a pipe. Now, because this trait is generic over t, we can use t to represent different formatting strategies. So here you can see that we have two different implementations for the print trait, where one formats the values of the vector using a comma separator and the other uses a pipe separator. Now, in a trait-only approach, this wouldn't be possible, so we'd have to use separate functions to represent the different formats. Okay, so now let's take a look at a full generic example where we can write one implementation for multiple types. So here's our generic sum trait again, and we want to implement this trait for multiple types, but we don't want to write multiple implementations. So what we need to do is implement this trait for a vector of a generic type, where previously we implemented it for a vector of i32s. So now instead of using a concrete type for both the trait and the vector, we're using a generic type parameter. So here we're using a type parameter called t, which is tied to both the trait and the vector. So that means that the type returned by the sum method will be the same as the elements in the vector. So essentially, if we had a concrete version of this implementation, then it will look something like this. Okay, so now in the sum method, just like before, we need a variable to keep track of the total. Now there's a problem here because we don't exactly know what the type of t is, so it could be an integer, a float, or something entirely different. So here, if we hardcode total as 0, then Rust will infer it as an i32, but this method is generic and returns type t. And we have to actually remember that it's the caller of the method that chooses what type t is, so doing it like this won't work. So what we need to do is initialize total with a default value of type t, and this ensures that everything stays consistent and we can return a value of type t. So now how do we get a default value? Well, we need to use the default trait, which allows us to create a default value for whatever type t is. Now, because t is generic, Rust doesn't actually know if it's supposed to default trait, so we need to explicitly add it as a trait bound on t. So now t is required to implement default, which constrains t to only types that provide a default value. Okay, so now we can iterate over the elements and add them to the total variable, but for that to work we need to tell Rust that t also supports addition. So to do this we need to add another trait bound, but this time requiring that t implements the add trait. Now, the add trait has an associated type called output, and this is because addition doesn't always return the same type. So, for example, in theory, you could add two different types together and get a completely different type back. So for this reason, we need to specify that the output type is the same as t. So that means that if t is an i32 and we add two i32 values together, then the result must also be an i32. Okay, so now we have two different trait bounds constraining what the type t can be. So let's go ahead and iterate over the values in the vector and add them to the total. So here we get an error because v is a reference, and in this case it's a reference to an i32, while t is an owned i32, so that means that we can't add them together directly. But what we can do is dereference v to get the actual value. Now since i32 is a copy type, the value gets copied instead of moved. So this basically means that we need to further constrain t by requiring it to implement the copy trait. So now finally we have a fully generic method that works with both whole numbers and floating point numbers. So in this video, we started by creating a very simple sum method without using generics, and then we tried to improve the code by introducing a custom trait. And then after that, we experimented using an associated type to see if we could improve the design further. And then finally, we combined everything into a fully generic implementation using trait bounds, allowing the sum method to work with different types. So with that, thank you for watching, and I'll leave a few more examples on screen if you want to keep exploring. In the meantime, keep building, and I'll see you all on the next video.